So today here we have Svetlana Velikanova, and she is the CEO of Harbour Space, a very innovative university in Barcelona, Spain. So welcome, Svetlana.
Very nice to be here.
So today I wanted to follow up with you because I did have an opportunity to come and visit Harbour Space during their demo day, and really had an opportunity just to see, you know, how innovative and just the work product of the students at graduation. So first of all, I want to thank you for the invitation, but secondly, it was just great seeing what the students were doing. So first, can you just talk a little bit about Harbour Space and what its mission is?
The mission of Harbour Space is to zero in jobs of the future.
Mm-hmm.
And in our mind and in the mind of the co-founders, we follow what we call the value creation pyramid, which we see in every sector of the society.
Mm-hmm.
And this pyramid has at the base all the work that is done manually, right? So that kind of, the productivity of the work done manually is not that great. If you look, for example, at the transportation sector, right? So yes, you can go from point A to point B, right, by foot. And then humanity invented a wheel, and then, we went to mechanical. So, the next is mechanical, and then we have electromechanical, microelectronics. So all of that we don't really do as Harbour Space. We don't really teach that anymore. What we focus on is the highest end of this value creation pyramid, which is software and algorithmic content. So, for example, in the transportation space, Uber has no mechanical, no manual, no microelectronics, right? All it has is algorithmic content and the software, right? And yet it is one of the most valuable companies in the transportation sector. I think that the valuation, even though it was lower than expected, still is 2 times what it is for General Motors and Ford and etc. So we believe that every sector, transportation, healthcare, education, will go through this value creation, and therefore all of the jobs of the future will be in that area, underpinned by 4 or 5 major currents of innovation, which are, of course, the internet, the broadband, and arrival of 5G, and also we think artificial intelligence and all the advances in algorithms, of course, will change the landscape for every single business, right? And make it a differentiating factor for many of them.
So is this kind of based on the idea that basically the economy is now moving, we're totally in a digitalization phase where everything is, this is the digital revolution with AI, and all of the different technologies that come with this. Is the university kind of built on that platform, digitalization?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that is the core of our product, and the core of our method is to focus on this, to embrace it, and to bring the human touch to this. So we focus on 4 major areas, which is entrepreneurship, but high-tech entrepreneurship. We focus on design, and when we talk about design, we mean interaction design, how humans interact with technology. And it's technology itself, which everything that has to do with cybersecurity, with computer science, and with data science, right? I mean, this, we always had data,
sure,
but now we have big data, right? And that changes everything. And then the 4th pillar, in addition to high-tech entrepreneurship, design, and technology, which we believe will be the main pillar going forward, is personal development for our students, because we think that, if you know a bit of a code, or you know how design people think, if you have a strong personality, if you can reach out to people, if you can work in networks.
Well, besides being in a digital revolution, we forget that part of the digital revolution, that it's also a relational revolution as well. That it's really about how do you build relationships in this economy. And so the interpersonal, I agree with you, it's critical. Learning how to kind of manage those, whether it's the emotional intelligence of the individual to just the capacity to communicate and be heard and also to empathize.
How to build others. And learn and network.
Absolutely.
Mindfulness for us is very important.
Yep.
Also, how you can use your natural sources like your spirit, your mind, and your body, to help you go through this roller coaster ride. Because we teach entrepreneurship. My
Yep.
God, I mean, this is not an easy thing.
Yep.
I'm, myself feeling this pressure every day.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be a certain type of a person. We have to build you. We have to expose you to all the methods that can help you to go through the stress.
That's exciting. That's exciting for a student that coming into a place where so many times you can join a university and it can just be about the knowledge and the technology, but we forget that the interpersonal is really key to building relationships. And that's fantastic. So, when I spoke with you a little bit at the event last time, you talked about, you shared a little bit about how you got started and the inspiration for you. Can you speak a little bit about this, about how you got started and how the relationship with your co-founder, Cameron, came in to place as well?
Yeah, of course. So I had this idea of creating University of the Future. Right, and of course I'm not a crazy person. I was thinking, I don't know what it means, to build the University of the Future. It was just like a calling, right?
Now, did you have any university or educational experience prior to starting?
Of course, like myself, I studied, in different universities. I studied in Finland, which is very famous for education, for 4 years during my bachelor's, and I did international economics and business administration. And then I went to Switzerland to what they believe is the Harvard of Germany. It's called St. Gallen University.
Yes, I'm familiar with that, yeah.
Yeah. So I studied there, and then I came to Barcelona, to a university that I didn't know was just opened. Actually, we were the first students at that university. It was a Catalan university called Pompeu Fabra. So I thought I kind of went through sort of an exciting period in education myself, experiencing the best in each country. What is the best university in each country that I've been to, and what is considered by them to be like, cream of the crop. Type of students, the type of content, everything. What really struck me during my years was that everything was based on memorization.
Yeah.
It was so bad. Like, nobody ever asked us during 5 years, what do you guys actually think about it? No, they were just asking, okay, tell me what you've read, And that was crazy. So that made us very, anger, I think, with the system. I mean, I was super angry.
Yeah, say a little bit more about that, because what I find is with educational entrepreneurs, a lot of that comes from the frustration of the traditional model, like myself. I'm a former dean of a college, and I got very frustrated when I saw that some of the things I wanted to do to compete with the entrepreneurs who were out there doing really innovative programming. And so that level of frustration moved me into an entrepreneurial space around education. So, it seems like that's a prompt many times.
Yeah, like I would say almost in 100% of the cases, people that like join Harbour Space or, as co-founders or faculty are the people that themselves went through a long period of frustration. Here in Europe, we don't pay money for this type of education, but in the US, imagine that people would go through this type of education on top of having a huge debt behind, right? So that was the thing, right? Like, I thought, sure, we don't pay, which is great, and I'm very grateful for like Finland, for the government being so kind to pay for my education. and also for Spain, who gave me a scholarship, and for Switzerland, which is also virtually free education. But I mean, we spent a lot of time, 5 years, on something that was not true.
Yeah.
You know, they were teaching us things that are simply lies. I mean, and of course you learn about it once you start working.
Yes.
And then it took me, I would say, 3 years to just unlearn what was wrong, what they taught me wrong.
Start challenging some of those assumptions.
Yeah, because you become sort of like an automate, and you start not questioning things.
Well, when I look at some of those universities, especially I believe in Europe too, where there's the level of competition. There's no competition that gives them a rationale to change. That's something that we find even in the U.S., where you have large universities who receive funding, and they're pretty much inoculated from the market. And it's changing now, because you're beginning to see that educational entrepreneurs are really challenging the assumptions of education, really looking at skills, looking at the interpersonal part, the project management aspect of
the retention
yes.
equation.
That's right.
How do you retain the knowledge?
Absolutely. So the universities, frustrated you, and you wanted to do something.
Yeah, in terms
different.
of like very simple conclusion that personally I came to after so many years of working afterwards, right? I thought, oh my God, so those were the best years of my life.
Yeah.
Like the first 5 years when you are free, you don't have a family, you dream, and those are the years that we should really infuse our youth,
sure.
With all this, great endeavors, right? And we don't, and we just make them, read the books and sit for exams, and it's just really silly, really.
And what it does, I think, is the creativity. When you're in high school, so often, they're in the A, B, C, D, E, F, and the F is the failure. So they've already developed, haven't kind of protected themselves against taking the risk that creativity needs. And it's almost like you were saying earlier, that they need to unlearn, so that they can really give themselves a sense of freedom and agency to create.
But that happens too late.
I know, I agree.
Especially in Europe, here we have students that graduate from the high school when they're 19, which means that they finish university around 25, 24, 25, because they take a gap year or something, right? So it's like, by the time you unlearn, you're 30 something, right? Your value on the market just becomes a little bit like more certain.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then you don't want to risk that, so you don't really do anything anymore about it. So you have almost like a creativity window, which we don't really tap into unless we change the key message to these students, right? And you change yourself. I mean, we cannot change the students if we don't change ourselves. So that was the premise from us, right? So but coming back to your question, the inspiration actually didn't come from I didn't know I would open a university, to be honest. But the regional idea was different. I thought, let's imagine I have convinced people, and I thought of billionaires, of course, to give, let's say, at least $1 billion for people that are extremely motivated and extremely talented, regardless from where they come from. So I thought, I have this magical idea of how to find these kind of people. And let's imagine I even have the money to send them to, somewhere to study. So then the question for me was, where do I send them? Say I'm suddenly, having $1 billion under management. So I feel strong. I feel like, I can go for the best. Can I really assure that these people will get a place in the Ivy League, right? Schools, or in Russell Group in UK. And I started looking at the capacity of these universities, and I realized the capacity, even if we had these super talented students, even if we had the money to pay for them, which is enormous. A full cycle in Stanford is like 500K.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought $1 billion doesn't sound much also. So I cannot get many of them enrolled. I have no control over whether or not they will be enrolled because it's not in my hands. And the capacity of Oxford, for example, in terms of computer science education is 28 students per year for the entire country. So what is the likelihood that my guys are going to get in there? It's very low. So that's how I realized we need to build our own university in order to have, sort of a vertically integrated talent company where you can have, assurances that, even if I convince people with money to give the money to pay for these people, because students do not have the money to pay and are not used to pay in Europe.
Yeah, you were mentioning that earlier, and I actually totally forgot about that in Europe, the payment for university is
unheard of.
What do you think that does for the students here? Do you think that gives them a sense of privilege, or how they view the university versus, let's say, an American university where you are paying everything and there's a pressure to...
I think it changes everything.
Yeah.
I know it changes everything.
Yeah.
And it is different from local students than from international students' perspective, right? I mean, if you're Spanish and you go to a Spanish university for free, you're kind of like, it's an easy option, right? It's like maybe in the state going to the in-state university. I don't know, the system in the States so well, to compare, but
sure.
It's like...
Well, back in the day in California, it's changed dramatically, but in California, colleges were community colleges, and even some of the state and University of California colleges, the tuition was so low that it was almost free, because that was something that Governor Brown, the first Governor Brown, started this whole master plan around education to make it virtually free in order to develop the human capital in California.
Is it now the same?
No. I mean, because California's budget often leaves the universities without a lot of money, and also the focus, on the land-grant universities on research has pretty much taken the student focus aspect of it out of the equation. So that's really why I was kind of interested in what Harbour Space do, because it's back to being student focused. Just looking at your classes, and that the way it's set up, it's all about the student, and that can't be said automatically at
and
every
all about
university.
The outcome.
Yes,
but a certain outcome.
Yes,
a certain outcome.
Sure.
Right. I think there is space for research-based universities, and I hope that they flourish. I really do, because I think it is important.
Absolutely.
But there is also space, which is bigger space, I think, for universities like Harbour Space, or other types of universities. Because even if you look at the research-based university, I don't think more than 2%. But I don't know the statistics. But I don't think more than 2% go to academia afterwards.
That's
to
correct.
Research.
Yeah.
But everything is catered as if they were to go there. Therefore, the teaching quality is not at the center.
That is the biggest complaint, because most professors, they have graduate assistants, and they often, there's a gap between what they teach and just their interaction with the students. Not all, of course. Of course, you have many professors who are looking forward to sharing their research knowledge as a way of enhancing the capacity of their students' learning. But for the most part, there is just the research component makes it very difficult for students. So you end up taking a class with, 300 students in there, which for me it was good because when I was in college, if I had a class with 300 students, then I didn't need to go. So I just read the book and showed up on test day. So that was my approach towards it.
Yeah, so it doesn't it feels like for many of them it's a bit of a burden to teach, right? Because
Sure.
they get the funds because of research, not
Yep.
because of teaching, right?
Yep.
That's one thing. And then the second thing is it's sort of expected a certain type of dynamics between if you're a student and if you're a professor. Also in Europe, you have to assume that professor is like a mountain Everest, you have to stand up when the professor comes into a class.
Really?
You have to clap. You have to also stand up and bow in certain, like in St. Gallen where I studied, you had to bow when the professor comes out.
Really?
Yeah. And that was like, and God forbid you come with a stupid question to the professor, or you speak too much.
Well, I wouldn't make it. I wouldn't make it there. That would be a challenge for me.
But we wanted to break that. We
Yes.
wanted us to be together in it.
So can you? Well, first, before my next question, I just want to go back to. You talked about the inspiration, and then you decided to start this university. So just take me through the process of how that all came together.
How we actually implemented it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like interesting to think of the roadmap. Like,
Yeah,
how
yeah,
do you
yeah,
open a university that
Yeah.
never existed, right?
Exactly.
And if we just go by the facts, we launched the website on February, and then we had our first students in September that same year. So that was 2016.
Wow.
And that was pretty challenging timeline, like very little lead time. The good thing was we kept our ambitions very low. We said, let's launch a university with maximum of 30 students. Because our founders, they said, guys, we have no idea how to run a university, right? Let's just accept that we're bad university managers. And we always love here about designers. We say you have to accept that you're a bad designer before you can become a good designer. And we said, yeah.
Well, I find it interesting because, I've been part of some educational startups, and always my biggest anxiety is, doing harm to the students, the first students that come in. How did you all
this
kind of?
This is super
Yeah.
crazy. When the first student
Yeah.
accepts you, you're like, oh my God, that person is now almost like in your hands, right? So you owe that person so much. Yeah, totally. I had the same fears.
Yeah.
I was not sleeping at night, like all the way, like I think year and a half. I was like, oh my gosh, what had I done?
So what gave you the sense that you all were doing the right thing and that where the confidence began to show up? Because I would imagine at some point the students were giving you some type of cue that they were enjoying the experience. So what, like you said, the early process could be nerve-wracking, but what began to give you the feeling like, okay, we have something here that we're doing, that has possibility here?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I, from the very beginning, realized, first of all, to have a full transparency with students on who is going to teach them. Because we couldn't sell a brand like, Harvard at Harvard. Mm-hmm. Nobody questions like, who's going to teach you at Harvard, right? So we didn't have that strength of a brand. Nobody knew Harbour Space, right? We were born in a garage of a boat in Barcelona. God, nobody ever heard of, a name like that. So how would someone decide to come as a student and trust you? So we thought the first thing that we have to do well is to be very explicit about who is going to teach you at what time and what, and give you all the access to the information, the same information as we have. So have full,
asymmetry in that sense, full symmetry, in that sense.
How were you able to get, I mean, obviously I know the other aspect that you wanted instructors who were from the industry, who were going to teach through innovative methods and practices.
Passionate about education.
Passionate.
And, yes.
So
professionals, like known professionals in their field. So that if people were looking for learning design, they would Google our teachers and they would be like, no way. And so that's what happened. So when we launched, most of the students, when we surveyed them, they said, we actually, our biggest fear was it's not true. It's too good to be true. So Harbour Space, from the outset, for them, the perception was it's too good to be true.
Sure.
So could that really be true? So most of the students' questions were around, can you tell me exactly when Irene is going to teach? Like what dates? I mean, can you confirm this? And all that. And we said, of course, we can confirm. And it was like,
wow.
So giving that information, I think, was really critical. Like them knowing what they're getting. Like exactly what they're getting. Every minute of it. Like you could actually read every day of what you're going to learn in Harbour Space. Every single day, imagine. So the information was so complete so that people could actually make an informed decision about what they were doing. And they felt that we are not selling something that we don't even know either how to sell or what is it that we are going to do. So that helped us also to be confident in that. So we relied fully on the teachers, on their personalities, on them being able to pull it out. We gave the teachers the full freedom to really go crazy, because otherwise they wouldn't come to teach. Cameron would never come to teach.
How were you able to recruit these? I mean, because these teachers, the instructors, come from all over the world, and they are tops in their field. How were you able to? What was your selling point for a startup university for them to come teach?
It was like a call, let's change the world type of a thing, let's change the world of education. At least, we have to pick up our fights, and some people fight for climate, and some people, for sustainable model of economy. Mm-hmm. And, we were at the core of it is education. So, there has to be someone with high quality standards, also with moral values, and with this sense of responsibility that you were talking to me about. Right? That you feel every single second that, you have to deliver. I mean, you cannot not deliver the best you can. So that call went really well with the people that we knew.
Sure.
And also, we've engaged most of the teachers from the very beginning into the design thinking and sort of, let's design this thing together. So people would fly to Barcelona, spend this time in a garage with us, and I still have the pictures and the videos of how we were coming up with a university. And I think that the two co-founders, the senior partners that I have, their presence meant a lot for the other people to join, because they were like, what if Ingo, who was the second person in McKinsey globally, joined this project? And if Kamran from Silicon Valley, because we were always saying, let's build Stanford for Europe. The first university focused on design technology, entrepreneurship, and personal development. Let's, we needed someone from Stanford. So we were like, okay, let's, have Kamran in here to make sure that we actually at least mimic Stanford in some way or another. And then that gave confidence to people that it's not a funny project, that the project will be funded, that the project will go ahead, and that it's worth their time.
So you mentioned a lot of design thinking in Silicon Valley. So I have a good relationship with those communities in the Bay Area. I think I may have shared with you, I ran a museum, so art and technology museum. So I had David Kelly actually help develop the design tools for us. So you have a relationship with them, and you mentioned Stanford and wanting to be kind of the Stanford of Europe. Is that still the case, or are you looking to be something very unique? Because sometimes we put Stanford and some of these other universities up, and obviously Stanford is a great university, but they still have their challenges in terms of who they groom, to be the students that graduate, from there. I mean, they have great skills, but they are not the end all for how we look at a student that can contribute to the world and to the economy. Is there a very unique
it's
aspect of Harbour Space?
Very good question, and very good point that you're bringing. I think when we said we want to build Stanford for Europe, what we meant was the sophistication of education, the real sophistication, and then the close links with the industry, and the quality overall of everything. Right, in every kind of being super uncompromising on the quality. What we are not definitely like Stanford
is in the sense of who our student body is. We focus on marginalized communities, and like my personal goal is to. When I look at the world, and I know there's like 7.5 billion people, and I think about 1 billion people from this 7.5 are privileged just because they're born in certain countries. If you're born in Europe, where everything is virtually free, if you're smart, one way or the other, you will do well. I think in some countries, or for other 6.5 billion people, it's not the same. I mean, if you are, and I think talent is distributed equally. I mean, it's not like you are talented because you're in Europe. You could be talented born in Somalia or Iran. I mean, it's known, I think, that a lot of PhDs in Stanford are from Iran, for example, but it's at the PhD level, I was thinking, wouldn't that be nice to know who are the great people in the 6.5 billion? And then if we know that they're great, because now we can know because of internet, because they online, they're fully mobile. I mean,
like 20 years ago, we wouldn't even know, or we wouldn't have a way to know who is in the 6.5 billion people. So I thought that is a great thing, and we found out that this is going to be our core strengths, that we're going to draw on students from the 6.5 billion people that nobody is even looking at, like nobody cares for them. So in that sense, I think in Stanford, like when you have 50 applicants per place and all the 50 are willing to pay, why would you even look for any other people? You know what I mean? So it's like elite is sort of breeding elite.
Absolutely.
So we thought that maybe that premise is correct, and then there is a space for us to work with the rest of the people, working even together with Stanford. I mean, next year we're working together with Stanford School of Engineering on learning from them the entrepreneurship method, and bringing professors from Stanford to here to sort of also have exposure to this type of people.
Sure. That's interesting because I think of marginalized communities. Excuse me. When I see your students here, and I was wondering who they were, and I would love to hear a little bit more about who they are. Because one aspect you're mentioning, marginalized, but I also would think that you're drawing a different type of student based on their personality and learning style.
Yeah, the way we assess.
The way you assessed, because actually, I just read the book Misfit Economy by Alexa. Forget Alexa's last name, but she speaks about a whole group of people who have certain types of skills in the economy that are unrecognized, but they They run some of the great enterprises, whether it's sophisticated criminal enterprises to, these artists, who are developing, technologies in warehouses on the east side of London. And so that kind of speaks to a certain type of personality style. So, what is the profile of the type of students that you think you draw to Harbour Space?
Misfits. Yeah, most of the time it's misfits or people. I mean, we actively scout students, so like unlike other universities that are waiting for the inbound admissions, like we're sitting and waiting that somebody will apply, which was the case when we just began, when we just came online and we were like, oh my God, will anyone even apply? How can they discover us out of millions of websites in the world, right? But now, almost from the beginning, we started looking for our own students, actively scouting them from, different communities that we believe have those pools of misfits.
What type of communities are these? So, how would you describe those communities?
Definitely like creative communities, like designers, for example, so all those like websites with awards, like, where you submit your website, you typically would find guys like, like that there. I would say geeks are definitely, I love geeks. But I mean like truly geeky people, like people that started coding at 3 years of age, that are not understood even.
Well, it was interesting because when you said earlier how the students they were looking at the descriptions in the background of your instructors, so that kind of told me that the students who were interested were kind of geeks and people who had a strong sense of the type of style and mentorship of people that they wanted to be around, the type of communities that they wanted to be around.
Yeah, of course. I mean, certain types of people are drawn. We seek out people that are alike, right? Like I'm seeking out people that are similar to me, usually, right? And so the professors themselves were misfits in that sense.
Yeah.
So that drew the attention of the other misfits that were just earlier down the value chain. I mean, they would become like them, hopefully, right? And then we wanted to touch the lives of these guys, like really genuinely help them in whatever way. I mean, including, if you are from Iran and, you cannot pay even the application fee because the banking system doesn't allow you to do so. And you clearly cannot buy a ticket to come to Spain, and you clearly don't know what to do with your visa to Europe. We would take care, from end to end for everything for you. So it was like super, like you feel like for the first time in your life somebody cares.
Yeah.
And you're like, is that really happening? So for many of them it was like that.
So how do you deal with? Obviously one aspect of any university attendance is housing. So given that most of your students come from other areas, how is the housing part dealt with? Do you assist with housing, or is that something?
I think that's an easy part. To be
Really?
honest, in a city like Barcelona, it's an easy part. People are not crazy. Like it's all so safe, and it's we don't have the same expectation as in the US, where you have to live on campus, right? So people actually enjoy living where they want to live, and there's so many areas in Barcelona where you can live and
great areas,
really live nicely and cheaply also.
Really?
Of course, like a student residence would cost on average 750 euros, whereas you can live and share a room in an apartment with a local family for maybe 300. This is, and for students, during the student life, your budget is really limited. You don't care where you sleep. You prefer to pay as little as possible to have the disposable income for travel, for going with your friends. You use the whole city as your
No, I mean, Barcelona is truly a great place to set up that type of arrangement. So that's pretty exciting. I want to switch real quickly. I won't take up too much more of your time here, but so you're the CEO. So we kind of talked about the fun stuff. When it comes to the type of students that you're bringing in. So as CEO, obviously the responsibility is around sustainability of the university. So is the plans to scale? In terms of student population, are you satisfied with the number of students that you have here, or do you need to have another university or another another campus too? Because I know that you're starting something in Thailand.
Yeah, it's the most difficult question for any, I think, CEO is how do you scale?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to us, a lot of investors ask us this question like, how are you going to double your student population, or how are you going to quadruple? And then what we found ourselves was that now we're opening in Bangkok, where we don't do it as a standalone university. We partner up with an existing university since like 50 years, and suddenly we have 20,000 students to project our vision onto. And it's a very strange situation going from like 100 students to 200 students and then to 20,000 students in one go.
Yeah.
So we just announced it. I don't know how it's going to go. The plan is that we are centralizing operations. So regardless of where you are, you will be applying through online. And there will be a team taking care of all the campuses in terms of admissions to assure that you have consistent standards everywhere. So we centralize admissions, we centralize marketing, we centralize technology. And I mean like marketing, global marketing. Of course, there will be local marketing as well, but like these types of key things, of course, branding is centralized. But at the same time, we do some local adaptations for the local campus. But I think there is a lot of value into opening campuses around the world. I didn't know at the time when we just opened here in Barcelona how fast it's going to come. Like I think for a university in terms of iteration, it's always like a year cycle. It's not like a normal technological company where you have 3-week iterations. No, you have to have the students in September and then wait for a year to iterate substantially, because students want to you have to have a balance between certainty and like what you change, right?
Sure.
In general, this is the dynamics of the students. But we are definitely planning to open more campuses. We will look for partners in countries where we're interested to come. Partners with very strong market access, with knowledge in this field. Like in Thailand, the president of the university that we're opening in will become the president of the JV, of joint venture with us.
Oh, I see. That's very smart. How would you deal with obviously starting here in Barcelona as a startup? You were able to use those relationships to get those the best instructors to come here and really kind of be part of this kind of smaller kind of test site. How will you scale in terms of instructors to keep that same quality that draw the interest of students in other places?
We're going to use the same principles.
Sure.
Like we have laid out principles for who do we engage. And nowadays, my problem was the reverse. I had more instructors that I really wanted to come back than courses we had, right? So we actually were so lucky and happy to open a second location because we already love these instructors and we want to make sure they have space to do their work.
Sure.
So for me, the problem was the reverse, to be honest, because initially we didn't know who we would like, so we tried many people, and we fell in love with them, and just want to continue. Actually, all our faculty know each other. It's not like you don't know.
Yeah, it's like
people.
a little network. Yeah.
Yeah, we all know each other. We meet regularly.
Sure.
We've have really fun time together. So it's a very tight-knit community that we're really building. Like our faculty always comes, like whoever came in the first year, came in the second, came in the third. I mean, we're just like super lucky with that. Again, because we do the real good job.
Sure.
It's like what we say to them actually turns out to be even better when you come.
So one last question, one last CEO question. So how are your metrics set up? What is your kind of KPI for you and Harbour Space and your output?
Of course, it's the number of students, right? It's the satisfaction of the students. It's the employability of the students, and also the satisfaction of faculty. I would say definitely the number of B2B partners that are willing to hire our students before they become our students, right? So that's what we work on.
Oh, nice, yeah. So you kind of keep that network of the B2B as a way of
reducing two frictions that we see that are major frictions in any country, in any higher educational system, which is, I think I mentioned to you that 40% of the students in the US don't have the money to eat. And the second problem is they graduate without experience.
Yes.
Practical experience. So that is what we're tackling here. Right, so that before you come and become a university student, you already have a job, and you are actually paid for studying.
That's
and
beautiful.
For interning, right? Yeah. And you have the time to do it because it's possible actually.
So do you consider yourself to be an educational revolutionary? Because it sounds like what you're doing here is something that the world needs right now, a new model for education delivery.
I think like the principles that we follow are truly revolutionary.
Yep.
I see that it's working. I think we need another couple of years to come out of the woods and like speak louder about the university of the future, and we're working on technology side of things, but we've tested everything with hands first, and then now we're going to sort of digitalize ourselves or disrupt ourselves yet another time, like internally.
Sure.
So I would say principles are definitely. I mean, I can clearly stand by these principles, and I can explain mathematically and pragmatically why this is the way to go for our type of university, which is not research-based but outcome-based, and which is a lot more personalized, and I would say a lot more human, like really human, really social, and is really more like a family and a community rather than just a sort of an institutionalized institution, whatever. And my metrics is that the students get great jobs and then they help others in the same way we help them.
So real quickly, I think I forgot to touch on this. So what are some of the key study focus areas for study? I know you have
we have two foundational programs, math as a second language, because a lot of students we see were intimidated by math or information sciences, or were simply not exposed to it at all. So we thought we need to create a foundational, intensive, immersive course where you can learn all of what you were supposed to learn during the high school, but just never did, within 12 modules. And also it's like a place where if you are not accepted to the main program at Harbour Space, you can always join the foundational program. And the second foundational program is called Design as a Second Language. So we have one for the technical tracks, and then the other one for creative track.
All right, so that's
And it's
Love
very
that.
affordable, and I mean, it's just like for us to see. And if you do well, we can take you to the main program once you pass a few courses, and we see how you think, how you behave within our system, and people recommend you to move to the main program.
That's a very ingenious approach, because what I learned, as a college dean, one of the challenges, I used to run a biotech and healthcare. And one of the things that I found is that the students weren't prepared because of their science history or their math history. And so what we did is we created a foundational course, but it was contextualized. So instead of just learning regular math, you learned it in the context of biotech and allied health. And that seems to have given the students a little bit more encouragement, a little bit more confidence that what they're learning is something that can be applied to what they want to do. And the results
And that's
were
the
pretty
spirit
good.
also of our foundational programs,
Yeah.
exactly that.
That's great.
Yeah, and it just allows us not to cut people off,
Yep.
without, strong reason for that. And, this way everybody can come to Harbour Space
Yeah.
if you're ready to sort of take a step behind and and start again. And
Well-
then it's design, interaction design, and then high-tech entrepreneurship, digital marketing, cybersecurity, computer science, data science, robotics. And we have in the pipeline aerospace engineering and biotech.
Oh, you do have biotech. Wow.
Yeah, it's all planned out already. It's just waiting to launch.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, huh?
Yeah.
In terms of what kind of students can learn that? It's not like anybody can just walk into the door and learn biotech. I
Yeah.
mean, that is
Yeah,
another thing,
absolutely.
right? Like private institutions could be like, I just need your money. Come in and study. No, you have to make sure that the experience.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because before I started that foundation course, we had students taking biology courses over and over and over again because they needed certain courses they needed to pass at a level, because the entry into biotech and nursing and allied health was so intense that if you didn't get 90% and above on the anatomy and some of those other courses, you couldn't even qualify. And so what we found, and you were talking earlier about marginalized communities, that a lot of the students from the marginalized communities were taking these courses over and over and over again and not passing or not getting the higher percentage. So when we created the foundational course, the whole idea was to give them the skills that they needed to go into that course, that qualifying course. And that seemed to have given some weight, to their opportunities and their chances. So,
How many students did you have in the master for biotech in the graduate program?
I believe we had about 85. Yeah, it's about 85.
That's huge.
Yeah, but
That's a huge number.
yeah, it's big.
It's really huge number.
Yeah. So anyway, so let me stop this here, and I just want to first thank you for inviting me out to Harbour Space and just allowing for me to interact with the students, which I enjoyed. I spent a lot of time speaking with the students and made some contacts. I'm putting some of them in contact with people, and when you're an educator, that's what it's about. And so I really appreciate that. And I just want to wish you all the best of luck, because I do think that, we need educational leaders in the world right now. This is a global innovation economy, and we need examples of who's driving the pipeline, for the world right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah.